The spaceship is on a mission to Titan, one of Saturn's moons. Astronaut John wakes up in the hibernation capsule. He feels weak after the long sleep. The drugs have many side effects and John needs some time to recover. He is greeted by the ship's captain, Franks. The captain orders John to take a shower and then come up to the bridge to discuss the next steps. Besides Captain Franks, John is met by his colleague Nash. Together the men watch a message from the Mission Control Center and receive new instructions. They are to conduct routine equipment checks and prepare for gravitational acceleration. John tries to pull himself together, but this time he feels worse. He struggles to eat and confesses to Nash that he can't remember the last name of Zoe, his girlfriend. By evening, John manages to check all the equipment. He records a response message to Mission Control, reports the situation, and prepares for another hibernation cycle, which will last 3 more months. A special substance is injected into the astronaut's bloodstream, and his eyes slowly close. Memories from the past wash over him, and for the next 3 months, he is deep in sleep. The awakening process is routine, with John experiencing the usual symptoms as he waits for his body to recover. After a hearty meal, the astronaut spends some time on the exercise bike, preparing for work, but unexpectedly he hears a familiar voice. It seems like Zoe's voice came from somewhere nearby. John steps into the corridor and walks through the empty spaceship. No one else has woken up from deep sleep yet, and John feels uneasy. His fear intensifies when part of the ship's hull above him starts to come loose. John tries to figure out what's wrong, but a piece of metal breaks off and knocks him unconscious. Captain Franks and Nash lay their injured colleague down and provide medical assistance. As soon as John feels better, the captain orders him to go to the technical compartment and figure out what caused the malfunction. Under the hull, John finds significant damage and a strange giant dent, but the footage Nash reviews from the cameras provides no answers. No objects approached the ship in the past few hours. Moreover, the dent hasn't caused any serious problems. All systems are still functioning normally. Captain Franks leaves his subordinates and orders them to report the situation to Earth. He himself heads to the site of the damage for another inspection. Nash tries to convince the captain to abort the mission and return to Earth, but Franks refuses to break protocol. There's no serious reason to do so, as all systems are still operating smoothly. The astronauts gather to make a joint decision, but the conflict only escalates. Nash starts panicking, insisting that continuing the mission is too dangerous, but the captain remains firm. Unless new orders come from Mission Control, they will continue toward Titan. Nash then tries to persuade John to act together. He's convinced the system will eventually fail, and by then, they won't have the chance to save themselves and return to Earth. Their conversation is interrupted by the captain, who calls them to the bridge. He admits that he overheard everything Nash said and doesn't appreciate his attempts to stir up panic. Franks tries to calm Nash down, reminding him of the consequences they'll face for disobeying orders and advising them to focus on their duties. Despite the captain's orders, Nash continues to urge John. He asks him to set the hibernation cycle for 89 days instead of 90 so they can wake up earlier than the captain and reverse course back to Earth. John doesn't like his friend's idea and doesn't want to be part of a mutiny, but when Nash tells him about another ship destroyed by poor leadership decisions, John agrees to think it over and give an answer after they wake up. John falls asleep again, recalling happy moments with Zoe, but this time the cycle is much shorter than usual. Nash demands an answer from his friends so they can quickly turn the ship around and head for Earth, but John remains uncertain. He realizes that his mind is clouded, and making important decisions in this state isn't wise. Jupiter appears outside the window, strengthening John's doubts. They are so close to their destination. This drives Nash over the edge, and a loud argument breaks out between the men. Captain Franks watches the whole scene. Having learned of his subordinates' plans, he also altered his sleep schedule and woke up earlier to prevent the mutineers from disrupting the mission. Franks sends Nash to check the systems again to make sure everything is in order. While the saboteur is gone, the captain invites John for a drink to gauge the astronaut's mood. The commander assures John that he'll cancel the mission if it's necessary, but for now they must stick together and follow orders. Nash's derailed plans push him to the brink of insanity. He causes a scene and Franks decides to relieve him of his duties and proceed with acceleration without him. John tries to stay out of the conflict and pretends that everything is fine, but the breach in the hull continues to trouble him, and he often has nightmares where it pulls him into the vacuum of space. Despite his concerns, John ignores Nash's pleas and heads to the bridge to prepare for the acceleration. The team gets ready to approach Jupiter. John sets the coordinates and sequentially activates the powerful engines that will take them to Titan. The acceleration is successful, and the ship enters the orbit that will guide them to Titan. But Nash still believes it's a serious mistake. John isn't entirely sure they made the right choice either, but he tries to keep himself busy to avoid dwelling on it. He decides to check the equipment again, and something strange happens. One of the radios transmits an unknown signal. The crew tries to come up with an explanation, both insisting that John must have accidentally pressed a button. To end the discussion, Franks orders the astronauts to prepare for another hibernation cycle. This time, exiting hibernation becomes a real challenge. John collapses to the floor, completely drained. He tries to recover, but while his body regains strength, his mind suffers greatly. He keeps seeing visions of Zoe everywhere. Captain Franks notices his subordinate's strange condition. He tells John to get a grip and realize that it's all just his imagination. Zoe is not, and cannot be, on the ship. Nash discovers the first signs of trouble. The reactor's power output begins to rise. He's not sure if it's connected to the hull breach, but if it continues, the ship's engine might fail. Nash again urges his friend to listen to him and turn the ship around. He reminds John of Zoe, saying that if they don't return now, she'll quickly find a new boyfriend. Captain Franks overhears the men's conversation once again. He summons them to the bridge for a serious talk. Someone, using Nash's password, deliberately lowered the engine's power to stop the ship. The commander won't tolerate Nash's antics any longer. This time he draws his sidearm to show the mutineer who's in charge on the ship. Franks orders the astronauts to return to their hibernation capsules to prevent any further sabotage. But as John's body starts receiving the drug, he sees what the captain is doing to his colleague. He doesn't have time to stop the crime. His eyes close. Weeks later, when the sleep cycle ends, John tries to figure out if it really happened or if it was just a dream. He steps into the corridor, but none of his colleagues are around. Franks appears suddenly. He assures John that Nash is fine but will remain in hibernation until the mission is over. The captain asks John not to complicate things and behave normally. They need to complete the mission and reach Titan, but if necessary, he'll use his sidearm to prevent further insubordination. To help John relax, Franks tells him the truth about the other ships Nash mentioned. He swears the madman distorted the facts, and in that case the captain wasn't at fault. The crew harmed themselves. John reluctantly admits he was wrong and agrees to continue working together. The captain tasks him with inspecting the equipment and re-establishing contact with mission control on Earth. While working, John's arm goes numb, and he tries to examine it himself, but for a moment it seems like the limb swells and turns into a monstrous hand. As soon as the vision disappears, John hears Zoe's voice again, but he realizes this is also a hallucination and doesn't respond to the call. Instead, John decides to discuss the future plans with the captain, but Franks unexpectedly starts talking about John's relationship with his girlfriend. The commander assures him that their romance wasn't real. It was orchestrated to convince John to join the mission. The unpleasant conversation unsettles John, and he heads to the workshop to focus on his tasks. Unpleasant thoughts and memories prevent John from concentrating, but suddenly the radio crackles, and he hears the dispatcher's voice. The astronaut tries to report what's happening, but the connection keeps cutting out and he can't hear a response. Franks summons John to the bridge. He demands to know what John was doing, and upon hearing about the conversation with Houston, the captain insists it was another hallucination. The captain orders John to return to his capsule and go back to sleep, but this time John's nerves snap. He demands that Franks wake Nash up and prove that his friend is okay. Taking advantage of a moment, Franks attacks John and tries to force him into the capsule, but John manages to break free. A fight breaks out between the two men. John is stronger, but he can't win the battle with his mind as easily as with the captain. John reaches the central computer to find out which chamber Nash is in and if he's alive. While entering the request, he has to fend off Franks, but finally, the computer starts searching for the astronaut. The answer John receives leaves him in shock. The program confirms that Nash is alive and on the bridge, just like John and Franks, because all three names belong to the same person, Captain John Franks Nash. John realizes that he's been alone on the ship the entire time. His companions were figments of his imagination caused by the repeated use of hibernation drugs. John loses his last bit of strength and doesn't know what to do next. He returns to the workshop, holding the service pistol. The astronaut tries to contact mission control again, but for a long time the radios remain silent. Finally, one of the radios turns on, and John hears Zoe's voice. She says she's at the ground control center and was invited to speak to him. Zoe confirms John's version. The hibernation drugs were too strong, causing his mind to become confused. But that's not the worst part. The girl tells the astronaut that there's no spaceship. All this time he's been part of a different experiment in deep underground. The planets and stars he saw through the window were just a simulation, as was the sensation of flying. But the impact was real. An earthquake hit the surface, partially collapsing the tunnel. Zoe asks her fiancé to gather his strength and help them rescue him. To do that, John needs to depressurize the cargo bay and leave the ship. She assures him that outside, there's an underground corridor leading to the surface. Captain Franks reappears behind John, trying to stop him. He claims that Zoe's voice is just another hallucination, and the story about underground tunnels and earthquakes is a fantasy his mind made up to explain the situation. Franks tells John that if he depressurizes the cargo bay, all that awaits outside is the vacuum of space, which will pull him out and end his life. John hesitates briefly, but Zoe's voice gives him strength. He doesn't listen to the captain and opens the airlock. At first it seems like Zoe was right. John finds himself in his shaft and hears her voice nearby. He walks toward the light, hoping to soon reach the surface. But space engulfs the astronaut's body and carries him into the infinite void. Or was that a hallucination too? That's how the movie ends. Aliens arriving on Earth first kill an entire small town and then bring half of its population back to life, although it's hard to call it life.
We searched for a new home. We found one. This planet.
Somewhere in Pennsylvania, in the small town of Berridge, a family sits down for dinner. Suddenly there is a loud bang outside, the lights go out and people briefly come to their senses before dying. Later on, exobiologist Lauren Stone hears news reports on TV about a powerful explosion in Berridge that killed the entire population of the town, 1,300 people. The air in the settlement is poisoned by some toxic substance, and the theory that the explosion occurred at the local chemical plant becomes increasingly popular. Lauren takes a bath and remembers herself, her father, and a field she used to run through. Her memories are interrupted by the arrival of the military, although Lauren does not quite understand how she can help with the investigation. Colonel Emmerich introduces her to astrobiologist Santiago. Geologists confirmed that the accident was the result of a meteorite impact which released a deadly gas. That's why they were invited to the crash site. The military will be grateful for any evidence they find that can shed light on the nature of the incident. Emmerich assures Lauren that he chose her because he read her work, but asks her to take an alcohol test. Scientists are dressed in protective suits and taken to the meteorite crash site. On the way, Santiago praises her book on microbiology in Antarctica and signs of extraterrestrial life, but the woman doesn't engage in conversation. Arriving at the site, the pair only sees a snowy field and a small pile of ground. While Santiago inspects the area, Lauren notices a small sprout of some red plant and pities it for growing in such a terrible place. Upon arriving home, Lauren begins to search for similar cases and finds mention of a similar incident. In 2013, a meteorite exploded over the city of Chelyabinsk in Russia, and an interview with the local resident was filmed by American television. She recounted that after the meteorite fell, a poisonous gas spread throughout the area, causing many people to die. It was also said that a very large tree grew at the site of the impact, around which all living things died. The tree was cut down and information about the incident was kept secret. In the postscript to the interview, journalists reported that the woman was killed almost immediately after it. The next day, doctors begin to perform an autopsy on the man who died in Berridge, and at first everything looks completely normal. But when the doctor makes an incision, a strange blue liquid begins to seep out, which then returns to the body after a short time and the wound heals. But even more surprising is the resurrection of the man who suddenly sits up on the table and silently looks down, not reacting to the voices of those around him. The man has no pulse or blood pressure and his body is cold. In other words, by all indications, the man is dead. Suddenly there are cries behind the door. It turns out that another 40 people suddenly opened their eyes and came back to life. The doctors tried to get some kind of reaction from the resurrected, but to no avail. They are all residents of the town center who not only inhaled the poisonous gas but also ingested some substance that led to DNA transformation. And the only thing the resurrected do is occasionally turn around. Meanwhile, Lauren tells Emmerich about the Chelyabinsk meteorite, But the people in Russia were also victims, which means that this is someone's terrible plan. But the colonel does not believe in conspiracy theories. Later, a government commission discusses the incident and proposes simply destroying the bodies before it's too late. But to get answers, all the data must be carefully studied, otherwise Manhattan could be next. Later, the woman buys alcohol and drinks it while sitting in the car, reminiscing about a trip she took with her father to a secret place. The next day, Lauren goes to a room where the revived people are sitting, and selecting a girl tells her about a book her mother used to read to her when she was a child, who has long since passed away. At that moment, her phone rings and a photo of the red plant from the scene of the incident appears on the screen, and the girl suddenly grabs Lauren's hand. The woman tells her colleagues about this and suggests that the plant is to blame. Santiago notices that all the survivors are looking in one direction, to the north, where the crash site is located. And then the colonel confesses that they found a sapling, but they don't know what it is because the plant is huge and continues to grow. The thing is that the area is sealed off and the plant was only noticed when it became visible from a distance. It turns out that it wasn't a meteorite that fell on the ground, but a huge seed. A team of scientists is sent to the site, taking one of the revived with them. They bring him to an unimaginably huge tree on a cart and watch from a distance, but he remains motionless. And when people have lost all hope, the man in the wheelchair suddenly moves, raises his head, looks in surprise at his hands and the snow under his feet, and then he admits that he can't survive in the Earth's environment, so he will stay here. Upon returning, Lauren reports that the tree is generating the necessary environment for its survival, including the air that is toxic to humans. The aliens arrived on Earth through special portals that scientists call wormholes. She is bombarded with questions, revealing that she has had problems with alcohol and prohibited substances. Later, a psychotherapist calls her answering machine, who was waiting for her at the session as part of her sentence. They were supposed to discuss her childhood memories that are haunting her, but she didn't show up. At that moment, her father shows up at the door, but Lauren is not pleased to see him. He tries to start the conversation and recalls how on her 8th birthday she asked for a scientific laboratory and they gave her an old barn. However, her obsession with space spiraled out of control and her mother became worried. Sometime later, the colonel summons Lauren again. The alien wants to speak, but only with her, as he sees her as a friend. They have prepared a list of questions and ask her to find out where they came from and why they came. The alien explains that their home is no longer suitable for their species. They were searching for a new home and found it using coordinates received from a human with the call sign Supernova 94. From that same human, the aliens learned all the strengths and weaknesses of humans. The alien asks the military to leave, and Lauren admits that the tree will soon destroy everything as it is harming the planet. The alien then says that humans will not be able to stop them because they are used to fighting and they have abilities. And here Santiago starts acting strangely. He drops his suitcase and begins to unzip his protective suit. The military personnel try to contain him, but they cannot do anything. The man falls to the ground and tears the hose from the mask of a soldier who was trying to help him. The soldier removes his useless mask and dies. Then one of the soldiers suggests shooting the alien. And just then they are hit by a sound attack that drives them crazy and they open fire on each other. One of the survivors takes stunned Lauren away. Later, a fighter jet armed with missiles is sent to the tree. The pilots see a small figure of a person at the base of the tree and receive orders to attack the target. But suddenly an impenetrable dome covers the tree. The missiles explode, causing no harm to the tree. Meanwhile, the news reports that the FBI is searching for a person with the nickname Supernova 94 who seems to be responsible for the expansion. People around the world tell stories about strange sounds that occasionally come from unknown sources. In some places, smoke emerges from the ground, killing all living things. People pray day and night, and martial law has been imposed in many countries. The earth trembles, crops die, and vegetables rot in the ground. One day, Lauren goes to her father's house. But first she approaches the locked barn, which has a sign that reads Lauren's laboratory. But after looking at the house, she walks away and heads towards the tree. For many years she has been tormented by the question of who or what she is. The end of the world is approaching, but she feels relief, as if she will finally live freely. And she plans to find the truth right here. She meets the alien who tells her that the tree's undergoing transformation. Feeling the tremble under her feet, Lauren lies down on the ground and listens to the hum of the planet. The time has come, new life is growing, and all of this has happened because of her. And finally, Lauren remembers the day when her father brought her to a secret base where an unidentified flying object had been brought down. Her father left her to wait in the corridor. Bored, she wandered through the rooms, listening to her father being instructed about a powerful and hostile creature that had tried to plant something before it was shot down by the military. The girl found the sarcophagus containing the alien and reached out to the glass. Suddenly, the creature reached out and touched the glass from the other side. She screamed in terror, not understanding what strange thing was happening to her, causing her to lose consciousness. The frightened guard found her and took her to her father. But the girl looked healthy and left with her father. Only from that day on, Lauren hasn't been quite herself. She draws super complex designs of interstellar ships and writes incomprehensible formulas. At school, she constantly gets in trouble, skillfully manipulating not only her classmates but also her teachers, calling herself an alien who wants to go home. And one day, Lauren tunes a transmitter she has built and contacts a distant planet, taking the call sign Supernova 94. Her parents are horrified and forbid her from entering the laboratory. Lauren smashes toys, draws on walls, and tells her mother the date of her death. It is then that her father learns of her new DNA. The girl seems to be changing, becoming something other than human. Adult Lauren sobs in horror at her discovery, but the alien welcomes her home and she remembers telling the distant planet all about Earth. Meanwhile, mysterious X-shaped objects begin to appear all over the planet. They emerge everywhere, in forests and cities, deserts and mountains. And one day they suddenly explode, spreading black smoke that kills all life around them. And no one can hide or survive as the roots have already penetrated the entire Earth. The planet is no longer suitable for the human race. All earthly species and plants have been extinct. The evolution of a new species has begun, and Lauren's journey has come to an end. She's finally home. And this is where the movie ends. Hello everyone! Today we're going to be talking about a science fiction film called Inuyashiki. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. Ichiro is a middle-class man who bought a new house for his family, but they don't seem to be very appreciative of his efforts, complaining how it's smaller than all the houses nearby. The father bought sushi for the family to celebrate, but they don't want any takeouts and instead goes to a restaurant without their old man. Ichiro has no choice but to enjoy the celebration by himself. At work, his boss complains about his new project that's trying to sell energy drinks, which is making the company lose a lot of money. Ichiro apologizes publicly while his manager yells at him in front of all his co-workers. He goes home after a tough day only to see some thug stealing from a man similar to himself. Ichiro turns around in fear, only to be spotted by his daughter, who blames him for being a coward. While sitting outside his house, Ichiro finds a stray dog, abandoned by her master, walking towards him. Her name is Hanako, and the main character feels a kinship with her right away. The wife sees her husband with the dog and immediately tells him to get rid of her. She hands him a report about his recent medical examination, which requires him to do further testings. Ichiro receives a terrible news from the doctor, who tells him that he has stage 4 cancer and only about 3 months to live. He tries calling his wife about the news, but she chooses to ignore him. Ichiro calls his daughter, but she also ignores his phone call. At dinner time, he tries telling his family about his medical condition, but they're too engulfed in themselves and continues to blame the father for every little mishap. The wife demands her husband to get rid of the dog while paying no attention to the pain in her husband's eyes. Ichiro walks his pet out into the streets and wonders if his family will even cry for him after hearing the terrible news. He apologizes to Hanako and tries to leave her behind, but she continues to follow him everywhere he goes. After failing to leave his loyal companion, Ichiro realizes that Hanako is the only thing in this world that cares about him and apologizes profusely for abandoning his friend. He sees another man named Hiro contemplating while sitting in the park, and both of them look up as they see a bright light heading this way. An object hits them with blinding speed, and Ichiro loses consciousness while strange creatures surrounds him as Hanako barks continuously. He wakes up in the morning, finding his dog beside him, and surprisingly, he somehow regained perfect vision without his glasses. Ichiro goes home for breakfast, only to find that he cannot taste any of the food and feels extremely thirsty while drinking water from the fountain. He goes to his room, only to see that smoke is coming out from his left hand. It then turns into a large rifle and shoots what appears to be the soup he drank from earlier. His whole body begins transforming and opening everywhere, showing mechanical parts underneath the skin. Ichiro manages to pull himself together as his wife walks into the room. It turns out that Ichiro's daughter, Mary, goes to the same class as Hiro, the man who was with Ichiro last night. He goes to his friend, Choco, and decides to show him the power he obtained from the encounter last night by shooting a bird from the distance with his fingers. Hiro then takes his friend to an underground parking where he demonstrates the ability to control cars with his mind and proceeds to reveal his mechanical body from underneath. At the same time, Ichiro leaves work and sees an injured pigeon on the floor. He holds the animal in compassion and surprisingly is able to heal it to full health and sends it flying again. He hears another voice of suffering from afar and quickly arrives to the hospital where a boy is close to dying from a terminal illness. Ichiro puts his hand on the boy and manages to bring him back to health, just like the pigeon. Seeing the mother reunite with her son, he goes off in happiness, knowing that he saved someone's life. On the other side, Hiro brings his friend to the bullies and demands that they apologize and give back the money they took. He grabs onto the bully's arm and hurts him until he gets exactly what he wants. Hiro points his finger towards the man, and just before he kills, Choco stops him, telling him it's enough. His apparent bravery catches the attention of a girl named Shion, who confesses to him in the hallway. Hiro thanks her for the compliments and walks away with a smile. We learn that his mother is divorced because Hiro's father left her for another woman. Even though she was betrayed by her ex-husband, she still shows care for his health and wants Hiro to spend time with his father. He goes to their house and spends time eating dinner with their family, but you can see that their happiness only infuriates Hiro from within, as he believes that it was stolen from his mother. While playing with his half-brother, Hiro points his finger towards the family and hesitates about pulling the trigger. He eventually stops as he looks at his father and realizes that he still cares for the man despite what he's done. Hiro walks home alone and hears all the happiness from the families nearby. He breaks into one of the houses and proceeds to shoot everyone inside. Ichiro hears this from the hospital after saving more people and rushes to the house where he finds the young girl with a bullet hole on her head. He tries saving her with his power, but realizes that it only works on living creatures. He walks in the living room and sees Hiro standing over the dead bodies. Ichiro recognizes the man from the park earlier, but Hiro attacks him and sends him flying before he can say a single word. He recovers unharmed and rushes out of the house, only to see Hiro flying off into the distance. Choco meets with Hiro and suspects his friend is responsible for the murders that occurred last night, since they all died with gunshots but no bullets. Hiro admits that he killed the family, but justifies this believing that he's a god now. He says that strangers die every day no matter what happens, and they shouldn't feel sorry for the people that they don't even know. Choco refuses to accept this and backs off in fear. He tells Hiro that they can't be friends anymore and runs away from the murderer. Hiro goes home to his mother and to his surprise, she tells her son that he must live with his father from now on. She explains that she has inoperable cancer and the doctors told her that she won't live much longer. Hiro embraces his mother and cries while swearing that he would never allow her to die. Ichiro goes home and tells his family that he was demoted by the company. The wife yells at him, worrying about their mortgage, while the daughter becomes angry at his father for his incompetence. Ichiro laments about his inability to protect his own family and doubts that he's able to stop the murderers and help others. Suddenly, he hears Choco's voice, praying that someone can stop his best friend from killing more people. Ichiro realizes that he has to stop doubting himself and resolves to use his powers to stop Hiro from murdering others. He transforms into his robot form and flies towards the sky while carrying Hanako with him. Ichiro arrives to the park and meets Choco. They talk about what happened on that night, and Choco speculates that aliens must have reconstructed both Ichiro and Hiro. He thinks that they both must have the same abilities and decides to train Ichiro based on what he saw Hiro is able to do. They go to a junkyard and Ichiro tries shooting a tin can with his hand. Let's just say that the old man has a lot of training to do before he can even come close to beating his rival. On the other side, Hiro goes to see the doctor with his mother, only to find out that the cancer has fully disappeared from her body, most likely due to her son healing her with his powers. They walk home together, and Hiro tries to convince his mother to enjoy life and go on vacations. He promises that he will make her happy, as her life has been difficult from the beginning. Their happiness don't last, however, when they're visited by a group of police officers demanding to question Hiro about the murders. He runs off immediately while his mother screams for his name. Hiro tosses the police officers around like rag dolls and sprints onto the parking lot. He uses his powers to kill 3 of the officers, while others fire at him with no effects. Hiro jumps down from the stairway and proceeds to fly away from the area. The news of his escape travels quickly through the media, and Hiro quickly becomes a fugitive with nowhere to hide. Luckily, he runs into Shion and she decides to take him in despite his current status. We learn that Shion is living with her grandma, the only relative that she has left. Her parents died of illness years ago, and she doesn't think that she can live long either. Meanwhile, Ichiro finally makes some progress on his training, but gets tired easily from all the exertions. He becomes thirsty again and grabs the energy drink from his company. Shoko speculates that the water must fuel their bodies as they become very thirsty after using their weapons. Ichiro begins feeling pain from his body and shoots out the liquid just like he did last time with the soup. Shoko quickly realizes that it may be the sodium contents that's causing his body to malfunction, and they may be able to use this to their advantage later. At night, Hiro watches the news about his mother, only to see that everyone is blaming her for what her son did. She apologizes repeatedly, but receives no sympathy from anyone. He falls into tears, realizing that the crimes he committed is now being paid by the person he loves the most in this world. The news then informs him that they found his mother dead in her apartment. Apparently, she killed herself after being pressured by the media. Hiro goes into shock at this realization. He begins reading the comments on the video, only to see everyone cursing at his mother's name. Hiro becomes enraged and uses his powers to hack into the commenters' computers. He begins shooting everyone through their screens, causing widespread mortality across the nation as the people fall dead after looking at their devices. Shion finds Hiro unable to sleep at night and tries to comfort him, but the man tells her that he's responsible for killing all those people. He transforms in front of her and tries to scare her away, but the girl refuses to believe that the man she loves is a killer. Hiro rushes her outside and takes her to the sky, asking Shion if this frightens her, but the only thing that the girl is scared of is if he left. He realizes that she's the only person left in this world who cares about him and promises to protect her and stay with her forever. Hiro is finally able to sleep, and Shion smiles and says that he's very human after all. She goes to the kitchen and feels something beside her. Shion turns around only to see an army of soldiers pointing their guns at her. Hiro sees this and grabs her immediately while the soldiers fire continuously at his body. He turns around and retaliates with fury, killing every one of them. When everything settles, he notices that Shion is already dead with multiple gun wounds on her body. Hiro cries at his friend's death and resolves to kill everyone in the country. Ichiro sees the news reports about the recent murders and warns his family to turn off their phones, but none of them listens and proceeds to go out despite the dangers. Mary meets up with her friends while they climb to the top of a high-rise to enjoy the sceneries. Hiro begins broadcasting himself on every single network and tells everyone his intentions of destroying the country in order to avenge his family. No one takes him seriously until he begins shooting at the masses and people are dropping dead everywhere. Everybody panics and runs in chaos, but there is nowhere to hide from his attacks. Ichiro manages to hijack the signal, and Choco tells everyone to throw away their phones in order to prevent the attacks. Without any way to reach the masses, Hiro decides to attack humanity directly by firing numerous missiles at the city and causing explosions everywhere. Ichiro finds Hiro and tries to convince him to stop, but his words fail to reach the young man as he begins chasing Ichiro through the sky. They go through the buildings in the city, and Hiro follows the old man closely. He begins shooting a barrage of missiles, but Ichiro manages to evade them as they explode right behind him. They fly through an underground tunnel, and Ichiro nearly gets hit by the upcoming traffics. As they fly closer to Mary, the father begins hearing her plead for help as her building was struck by one of the missiles. The old man rushes towards his daughter, but gets attacked by Hiro from behind, which stunts his flight system and forces him to crash land on the side of a building. Ichiro tries shooting at the man, but Hiro dodges the attacks and kicks him through the building. They crash into a helicopter and knocks it towards the walls, causing it to explode. They land on a rooftop and Ichiro continues to beg Hiro to stop killing. The young man takes out a bottle of water and tries to recharge, but Ichiro destroys it. Hiro charges at him and takes the water from the old man. He drinks the whole bottle and continues to fire missiles, sending Ichiro flying into the sky. Hiro chases the old man as they fly further into the atmosphere. He fires more missiles at Ichiro, who gets pushed by the explosion into outer space. Hiro punches him and takes this opportunity to grab the old man, planning to finish the fight with a final attack. To his surprise, instead of firing missiles, he shot out the water he drank earlier, which turns out to be energy drink replaced by Ichiro. Hiro falls back as his body malfunctions. Ichiro transforms his arm into a rifle and shoots numerous projectiles at Hiro, sending him flying towards Earth with the explosions. The old man flies towards the building where his daughter is at and sees Mary lying motionless on the ground. He tries everything in order to resurrect her and manages to bring back her breath. They embrace each other as tears fall from the old man's eyes. Suddenly, he gets kicked from the side, which sends him flying to the walls. It turns out that Hiro survived the fall from earlier and returns to take his vengeance. He learns that Mary is the old man's daughter and begins attacking her, shooting her stomach as Ichiro interferes. Hiro punches the old man around like a rag doll and continues to beat him in front of his daughter. He grabs Mary and takes her to the edge of the building. Hiro wants the father to experience the same despair which he feels every moment and throws the daughter off the building. Seeing his family about to get killed, Ichiro charges all his energy and flies towards Hiro. He crashes into the man and breaks off his arm while flying towards his daughter. Ichiro charges downwards and sees that Mary is still falling. He reaches out on the girl and manages to catch her right before hitting the ground. Mary wakes up after being healed by her father and realizes that her old man is a superhero. She sees him fly off as he rushes to save as many people as he could. Although the government has confirmed Hiro's death, they haven't really found his body on site, only shards of metals of unknown origins. Ichiro continues to have dinner with his family like everything is normal, but his daughter now sees that her father is a true hero. Choco goes home and to his surprise sees that Hiro is still alive, but missing an arm after the fight. He's glad to see that his friend didn't die and offers him to play the newest video game. Choco turns around after finding the game, only to see that Hiro has left, knowing that his presence would only endanger his best friend. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my video, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about a science fiction film called Terraformers. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. In the 21st century, humans tried to solve the problem with overpopulation by changing the atmosphere of Mars. They managed to accomplish this by growing plants and sending genetically engineered cockroaches to the neighboring planet in order to speed up the transformation. The year is 2597 in the city of Tokyo. Komachi and Nana are being chased by the police for committing the crime of murder. Dr. Honda, who works with the Japanese government, takes this opportunity and offers them a deal that they cannot refuse. He wants them to go on a mission to Mars, where they're going to eradicate the cockroaches sent there 500 years ago as part of the terraforming process. The doctor promises to alleviate them from their crimes and even grant them a large sum of money if they complete this task. Komachi refuses to sign the contract as he knows that the doctor must have an ulterior motive. Nana hesitates but decides to go on the mission as she sees no way out. Komachi yells at the girl for being so reckless as there's no way he can allow her to go alone. The main character begrudgingly signs the contract as well. They head on to Mars 2 years later on the spaceship called Bugs 2 and are joined by a team of many others just like themselves. Komachi has a friendly rivalry with a man named Jin, who's always trying to beat him in hand-to-hand combat. Nana questions the competence of their team members as they're composed of criminals and terrorists. She wonders what was the selection criteria for this team, to which Jen replies that it was probably money and freedom. Their conversations are interrupted when Captain Dojima arrives and informs them to prepare the landing for Mars. They successfully touch down on the planet, and the team members are surprised to see that Mars is no longer red, but looking more like Earth. The lieutenant, Mina, launches a device into the distance, and he begins shooting out chemicals that are meant to destroy the cockroaches. The captain orders the team to spread out in groups of 2 and confirm the eradication processes within 3 hours. The gothic-looking woman named Asuka refuses to team up with the Yakuza and insists on going with the computer hacker Ichiro. The captain grants her wishes at the Yakuza's disapproval, as he doesn't want any unnecessary conflicts within the team. Their drone locates the spaceship called Bugs 1 that was sent here secretly by the Japanese government 10 years ago. Dojima confirms with Honda that their team is in the process of first contact, and the doctor responds with exhilaration, suggesting that he may have something else planned for the mission. Jen notices something wrong while scouting the area with Maria, as they fail to find any cockroach carcasses in the vicinity. They continue heading forwards, and Jen is shocked to see a caveman-like humanoid standing in front of them. He quickly hides with his teammate to avoid any contact. At the same time, Komachi and Nana also discovered a similar creature. The main character tries to greet the humanoid, but it rushes towards them and attacks Nana right away, breaking her neck. It then runs off in blinding speed as Jin's team regroups to their location. He tells Komachi that other members have also encountered the creatures and Asuka was killed in the process. They head back to the ship and questions the captain, who apparently knew about the monsters from the very beginning, though was ordered to keep quiet by the doctor. He explains that these creatures were sent here 500 years ago, but evolved very quickly due to the abundance of radiation. The doctor appears as a hologram and explains to his team that they had nothing to worry about, as he prepared injections that can grant them superpowers derived from the insects. They'll have unique powers individually, as the injections are made to enhance their DNAs. Osako suggests that they leave Mars immediately, as it's obviously too dangerous to stay here. The terraformers begin approaching their ship, and one of their teammates, Lee, volunteers to fight the monster. He heads outside as the sandstorm approaches and injects himself with the insect's DNA. A mutation occurs rapidly inside the man's body, and he transforms into an insect hybrid. His mutation is based on the brown beetle, which is capable of shooting out flames by combining chemicals in their body. Lee begins attacking the cockroach, knocking it back with a fury of kicks. The terraformer strikes back as well, and they appear to be evenly matched. Lee uses the special ability and shoots an intense flame from his hands, burning the creature and pushing it backwards. To everyone's shock, Lee didn't kill the cockroach, only burning its outer shells. The monster rushes towards him and kills him with a single hit through the stomach. They see another creature on their window, and it continues to hit the glass until it breaks inside and kills 2 of the teammates immediately. The captain injects the DNA and begins mutating into his hybrid form. His transformation is based on the bullet end, which allows him to lift 100 times his own weight. Dojima smashes the cockroach to the floor and kills it easily with his immense strength. Before they can celebrate, the radar picks up hundreds of terraformers heading this way, and the team decides that they must leave Mars in order to survive. The lieutenant tries to start the spaceship, but strangely, the engine refuses to work, almost like it was sabotaged. With no other choice, the captain decides to be the decoy and tells everyone else to go to Bugs 1 and retrieve the necessary components to fix their ship. Surprisingly, Ichiro volunteers to stay behind to help the captain as well. Komachi takes a last look at Nana before he leaves and promises to return for her. Strangely, he notices a string of silk flying off from the woman's mouth. The team enters the Mars rover and Tezuka injects himself with the insect's DNA, transforming into a rogue beetle capable of shooting out flame projectiles. He grabs onto the Mars rover and propels the team against a horde of terraformers by shooting flames from his mouth. Meanwhile, the captain continues to fight off the hordes of cockroaches, and Ichiro transforms into his insect form as well. He runs away from the fight and proceeds to vacuum out the oxygen in the ship in order to suffocate all the invading terraformers. The cockroaches begins to die off one by one, and Ichiro faints to the ground as well from the lack of air. At the same time, the Mars rover team sees a large wave coming towards them. It turns out to be a tsunami of terraformers, and they must charge through the enemies in order to escape. Tezuka focuses all his energy into propelling the rover, and they crash into the sea of cockroaches. Luckily, the team manages to break through and land safely on the ground. They continue forwards, but soon sees another tsunami of insects much larger than the one before. Osako and Maria decides to defend the team from the outside and transforms into insect hybrids while heading towards the wave of terraformers. They try their best to fight off the incoming cockroaches, but the vehicle flips as they exit the horde, throwing the teammates in the air. Everyone inside the car gets knocked out, but the rover goes into autopilot and drives off. The teammates left behind tries fighting off the insects, but gets killed one by one. The rest of the team wakes up only to find themselves at Bugs 1 already. Komachi tries looking for the other teammates, but the Yakuza thinks that they are the only survivors. They head into the spaceship, while two of them stand guard outside. Mina tries running a diagnostic on Bugs 1, only to see that it's somehow transmitting data towards Earth. The group hears gunshots from the outside and rushes towards their teammates, only to find them lying dead on the ground. Apparently, the terraformers have learned how to use weapons and kill the two standing guard with the guns from Bugs 1. Komachi injects himself with the DNA and transforms into a giant hornet with amazing battle powers. He attacks the cockroaches with devastating blows as he punches holes into their bodies. Jin's mutation turns him into a desert locust that can jump 90 stories in a single leap. He's able to decapitate numerous enemies using his kicks alone. Mina transforms into a praying mantis and slashes the insects into pieces. The team quickly overwhelms the cockroaches and destroys them with little effort. On the other side, Dr. Honda talks to one of the terraformers who's able to speak unlike the others. It goes to Bugs 2 and turns on the oxygen while pointing a gun at the captain who's lying on the floor, exhausted from the fights. Suddenly, the cockroach gets opened up from the inside and Asuka emerges from its body. It turns out that her transformation is based on the Emerald Cockroach Wasp, who has the ability to control the minds of cockroaches and wear their exoskeleton as disguise. Instead of dying from the earlier attacks, she was able to manipulate the insects into killing each other. She quickly dries her face from the sticky white liquids and proceeds to shoot the captain multiple times. Asuka pours water onto Ichiro, whose transformation is the Asian Chironomid. He can survive in almost any condition and only requires water to reactivate his cells. They turn out to be working on a secret mission for the Doctor, and Ichiro was the one who sabotaged the flight system on Bugs 2. The Doctor ordered them to bring the eggs from the terraformers back to Earth no matter the cost. Komachi and his team hears the Bugs 2 engine from afar, and the Doctor explains that their plan was never to simply exterminate the cockroaches from Mars. He plans on retrieving more genetic materials from the insects in order to make better hybrid soldiers for the Japanese government, which no doubt will make the country become a superpower. They are put on this planet mostly as test subjects, and their fight with the terraformers are recorded as valuable research data. In fact, they were only able to create the insect hybrids because Bugs 1 was able to retrieve a carcass from the cockroaches. While Ichiro and Asuka plans to take off from Mars, the eggs hatch prematurely and produces two evolved terraformers. Asuka charges in and stings them with her claws, trying to control their minds, but their evolution has granted them immunity to her powers, and they proceed to kill her by punching through her stomach. The spaceship takes off into the air, heading for Earth, while the new terraformers call for help from their brethren. The cockroaches from the ground opens up their wings and flies towards the spaceship, causing it to stall and malfunction while guiding it back onto the planet right beside Bugs 1. The evolved cockroaches surrounds the team with their armies of insects and orders them to attack. Komachi and his team transforms and fights off the enemies with everything they have. They manage to defeat many of the terraformers, but runs into trouble when facing the two evolved ones that show amazing battle powers similar to human fighters. Mina tries attacking one of them, but gets her arm ripped off and killed in an instant. Seeing his friend being destroyed like nothing, Jin injects himself with his second dose of mutation, causing the transformation to progress even further, increasing his powers. Komachi injects himself again as well, and the two continues to destroy the enemies with their heightened abilities. After killing many of the terraformers with his kicks, Jin jumps into the air and injects himself a third time, causing wings to grow from his back. The army of cockroaches flies towards him and fights him in the air, but they're no match for the human hybrid and gets destroyed into pieces. They continue to fight against the creatures waves after waves and eventually slows down as their fatigue becomes more apparent. Jin understands that they must destroy the leaders and injects himself with multiple doses of mutations, causing his body to spike in power but also making the transformation permanent. He takes this opportunity and attacks the evolved cockroach with a devastating kick and kills him by knocking his head off. Jin falls down soon after as he exhausted all his reserves. Komachi tries to defend him against the remaining leader, but gets defeated easily and gravely wounded. Just when they're about to be finished off, the evolved cockroach notices something from behind and posts back his attack. A glowy moth-like creature flies towards the insects while dropping sparkles of dust in the air. It turns out that Nana's body has evolved into her final form in order to aid her teammates against the terraformers. She flies towards the cockroaches and continues to drop the glowing dusts. Jin realizes that these are miniature bombs, while the terraformers looks at it with intrigue and confusion. Komachi flies towards Nana, trying to save her from the battle, but Jin tells him that she's been dead a long time ago. One of the cockroaches fires at Nana, which causes a chain reaction of explosions. Jin rushes towards his friend and saves him from the explosions in the last minute, while Komachi cries, seeing the woman he loves buried inside the flames. When everything settles, Komachi wakes up and walks towards his friend, only to see that he's permanently transformed into a locust creature. He tries to comfort Jin and tells him no matter how he looks, he will always be human in the heart. With his last breath, Jin tells his friend to live on for both of them, as tears fall from his eyes. Komachi finds the evolved cockroach still alive and punches him in anger for the destruction that he caused. He plans to finish the terraformer, but eventually decides to end the hatred between men and insects by sparing his life. He goes inside the spaceship only to find Ichiro still alive. The man points a gun at the main character, but saves him by shooting the terraformer behind instead. They decide to cooperate for now and resolve their differences once they get back on Earth. The two launches the escape pod into the atmosphere, while the evolved cockroach stops his brothers from chasing after, repaying the debt for sparing his life. Meanwhile, Dr. Honda notices that Ichiro has hacked into their system and is broadcasting the whole event on international television. He decides to hide as the government will surely kill him for his failure and embarrassment. His assistant points her gun at the doctor as she turns out to be a spy from the government. She fires at the doctor, but Honda has planned for this contingency already and proceeds to kill the woman with a deadly poison. On their way home, Ichiro swears that he'll expose the people responsible for this experiment, while Komachi has a strange feeling that they'll come back to this planet in the future. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my video, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time. This story is set in a world grappling with a unique and terrifying epidemic. This epidemic, which has baffled scientists and experts for over 8 years, is spread through language and speech, making communication dangerous. The main symptom of the disease begins with a high fever, eventually causing the afflicted to speak incoherently, descending into madness. As a precaution, people have resorted to wearing headsets constantly, as the disease can be transmitted by hearing the speech of the infected. Those affected by the illness, known as jabbers, are swiftly quarantined and forcibly separated from their families, leading to public outrage and distress. The story introduces Murat, a linguist whose life has been profoundly altered by the pandemic. Isolated and lonely, he lives with his mother in an apartment, his life reduced to a series of cautious routines. Each day, Murat meticulously checks his temperature, a ritual that underscores the constant fear of infection. One day, Murat's attention is drawn to Sul, a young woman immersed in a book at a bus stop. Time seems to stand still as Murat is captivated by her presence. However, the moment is broken when she notices his prolonged gaze. Realizing he's been staring, Murat awkwardly shouts that no bus is coming and quickly departs, heading back home. The narrative continues as Murat, despite his reluctance, leaves his home to buy soap for his mother. While at the supermarket, he encounters an old woman who suddenly turns around and speaks incoherently, a clear sign of being a jabber. An alarm is triggered, announcing the presence of a jabber and urging people to evacuate immediately. In the ensuing chaos, everyone flees, except for the old woman and a young boy who is left behind without a headset. Murat witnesses the boy's mother crying outside. Driven by a sense of responsibility, Murat bravely re-enters the supermarket, gives his headset to the boy, and makes a narrow escape. Remarkably, Murat manages to avoid contracting the epidemic. Despite his close encounter with the jabber, he experiences a high fever but eventually recovers and returns home unscathed, soap in hand. Meanwhile, Anton, a high-ranking official at AEI, is desperately seeking a solution to the pandemic. He faces a setback upon learning that even young children are susceptible to the disease. However, his interest is piqued when he hears about Murat's incident at the supermarket. Intrigued by the possibility that Murat might be immune, Anton delves into surveillance footage to learn more. He observes Murat collapse collapsing in the supermarket, but later continuing on as if unharmed, which deepens Anton's confusion and curiosity. In another part of the city, Murat visits the home of his mother's friend, responding to a desperate call for help. The friend's son, Arif's father, is exhibiting symptoms of the disease, speaking disconnectedly. Arif, holding on to hope, pleads with Murat to find a cure, believing in Murat's unique abilities. He even suggests collaborating with Murat's friend Özgür, but Murat informs him that Özgür has passed away. Arif, skeptical about Özgür's death due to the lack of a proper funeral and the absence of his body, plans to meet with Erol, a businessman known for trading in information. Arif hopes Erol can shed light on whether Özgür is indeed alive and assist in their quest for a cure. Meanwhile, Anton takes a deep dive into investigating the mysterious case of the headset left with a child at the supermarket. He discovers that the headset belongs to Murat, a linguist who was working on the pandemic case but vanished after a disastrous fire that claimed the lives of his team. Intrigued, Anton intensifies his investigation. Delving further, Anton uncovers records of Murat visiting the emergency room with severe fever more than 12 times. Using video footage from the supermarket, along with a temperature detector, Anton confirms his suspicions. Murat is immune to the pandemic. He deduces this from the fact that Murat has surpassed the critical threshold of 4 high fever encounters, a significant discovery given Murat's 12 instances. In the meantime, Murat, spurred by Arif's belief in Özgür's survival, decides to investigate further. He meets a businessman who offers them access to AEI's resources, allowing them to gather information independently and save costs. With newfound determination, Murat boldly infiltrates the AEI headquarters and navigates his way to the information hub downstairs. There, Murat searches for Özgür's name and is initially disheartened to find records indicating his death. He clicks on the autopsy image, expecting the worst, but is surprised to see an unrecognizable burnt face with no identifiable tattoo on the wrist. This absence of a tattoo, which Murat knows his friend had, rekindles his hope that Özgür might still be alive. Before leaving the hub room, Murat impulsively searches for his own name in the database. To his shock and dismay, he discovers video footage of himself from the supermarket incident. Realizing the potential danger of this discovery, Murat hastily exits the room, unable to delete the record. His escape is filled with anxiety and urgency, knowing that his presence in the AEI database could have unforeseen and dangerous consequences. Soon after, Anton, fueled by his significant discovery regarding Murat's immunity to the pandemic, eagerly approaches his superior to share his findings. However, his excitement quickly turns to frustration when his superior dismisses his claims, cautioning against spreading unverified rumors. Frustrated by this response and determined to pursue the matter further, Anton decides to take matters into his own hands. He acquires the address of Murat and his mother's home, although under a false name, and sets out with his men to capture Murat. Upon arriving at the destination, they find Murat's mother answering the door, mistakenly assuming it might be her son. However, the AEI forces swiftly invade the home, scattering throughout the house and the apartment complex. They strategically position themselves, lying in wait for Murat's return to spring their trap. Unnoticed by the AEI operatives, Murat's mother subtly places a prearranged signal on the window, a discreet method of communication between her and her son. She then calmly lights a cigarette and sits down, maintaining an air of composure despite the tense situation. Meanwhile, Murat, who had been waiting for another glimpse of the beautiful girl he had seen at the bus stop, returns home. As he approaches his apartment, he notices the signal from his mother. Realizing the imminent danger, he hesitates at the entrance. Inside, Anton and his team are eagerly anticipating Murat's arrival, ready to execute their well-laid plans. In a moment of inner conflict, Murat grapples with the decision to enter the apartment. His thoughts drift to the beautiful girl, and the realization dawns on him that if he walks into the trap, he might never see her again. This thought acts as a turning point, and in his swift decision, Murat chooses to flee in the opposite direction, much to Anton's dismay. His abrupt departure catches Anton and his men off guard, and and they lose track of him in mere seconds. Back at Murat's house, Anton seizes the opportunity to collect Murat's belongings for further investigation, hoping to get more insight into Murat's unique situation. The next morning, as Murat sets out on his search for Osgur, he is stopped by AEI forces demanding to see his ID. In a moment of tension, as Murat nervously reaches for his ID, a bomb suddenly explodes nearby, causing the AEI forces to scatter and leaving Murat unattended. Seizing the moment, Murat heads to a location where he believes he might find Osgur. However, his hopes are dashed when he discovers Osgur is not there. Speaking with the man who made Osgur's distinctive tattoo, Murat learns that since Osgur's death, others have been imitating the tattoo, diminishing his chances of finding Osgur. Meanwhile, Anton meticulously reviews tape recordings overnight and stumbles upon a recording of Murat claiming that he is incapable of jabbering, even if he wanted to. This revelation prompts Anton to rush to AEI to share his findings with a colleague. However, upon his arrival, Anton is informed that his boss Fazil is waiting for him. In a confrontational meeting, Fazil sternly instructs him to withdraw from the case. During this time, Murat finds comfort in a conversation with an old man who offers him a drink. As they share this moment, the old man tries to alleviate Murat's guilt over his wife's tragic death, which occurred after she was affected by the pandemic. He reassures Murat that it wasn't his fault. Murat listens in silence, eventually sharing his plans to venture into Zone 6 in his relentless search for Osgur. Soon, Murat seeks the help of Errol, a man introduced to him by Arif. Errol is known for his willingness to do anything for money, and Murat needs him to create a false ID. They arrange to meet the following day. Afterward, Murat visits Arif's house, where he expresses his determination to find Osgur and their shared goal of discovering a cure for the epidemic. Before he leaves, Arif's grandmother generously gives him some money, while his mother, having no cash, gives him her necklace as a token of support. However, their movements do not go unnoticed. One of Anton's men spots Murat and promptly informs Anton, who instructs his team to tail him discreetly. The next day, Murat meets Errol as planned to collect his forged ID. Just as they complete the transaction, Errol receives an alert that AEI forces are closing in on their location. In a frantic rush, they escape, successfully evading Anton and his team, who later search the warehouse to no avail. With his new fake ID in hand, Murat heads to the subway station, bound for the less monitored Zone 6. He smoothly passes the initial security checkpoint using the fake ID. However, his sense of safety is short-lived, as a security guard becomes suspicious upon recognizing Murat's face from wanted posters in the subway. In a coincidental twist, Sul, who Murat has been longing to see again, suddenly appears in front of him. To his astonishment and delight, she kisses him right there in the subway, creating a moment of confusion for the pursuing security guard. This unexpected encounter leaves Murat feeling ecstatic. Holding hands, they continue their journey on the subway, embarking on a path filled with uncertainty, yet united in their unexpected connection. Murat and Sul, having left the bus stop, navigate through menacing people and areas until they find a secluded rooftop where they can talk privately. On the rooftop, Murat, preoccupied with his quest to find Osgur, is about to leave when Sul insists he stay for a meal. During their conversation, he learns her name and he expresses gratitude for her assistance earlier. Sul then reveals her true intentions. She had been following Murat purposefully, hoping to recruit him into her team, P1, which is dedicated to finding a cure for the pandemic. Surprised by this revelation, Murat abruptly leaves, not allowing her to finish explaining. Later, Murat returns to the home he shares with his wife, where he is flooded with memories as he wanders through each room. That night, he dreams of himself torn between his wife and Sul, symbolizing his internal conflict. The next morning, Murat's search for Osgur takes an unexpected turn when he is kidnapped by masked individuals who question his identity and affiliation with the AEI. At this critical moment, Sul intervenes, assuring them that Murat is not with the AEI and is on a personal mission. Murat convinces them of his intentions, and they agree to share information if they cross paths with Osgur. Sul then brings Murat to his studio where she works, and after apologizing for the earlier misunderstanding, she hosts a podcast. In the broadcast, she discusses the AEI's cruel practices, relating them to the unjust death of her boyfriend, and concludes by emphasizing the importance of finding a cure to end the crisis. Meanwhile, Anton retreats to his house house, where his wife and son are quarantined in the basement due to the pandemic. While there, Anton senses he is being watched. Upon investigating, he finds no one, unaware that Fazil's right-hand agent is covertly observing him from a hiding spot somewhere else. Murat and Sule's journey through the pandemic-stricken streets of the city continues. While walking downtown, Murat demonstrates his unusual resistance to the pandemic by briefly removing his headset near Jabber's, showcasing how his skull heats up without experiencing the usual symptoms. This unique ability intrigues Sule, who sees potential in Murat's immunity. That night, Murat stays at the studio with Sule, and upon waking up the next morning, he finds himself surrounded by the team Sule had mentioned. The team members introduce themselves and request Murat's assistance. Initially hesitant, Murat warms up to the idea when Sule assures him that joining the team could aid in his quest to find Osgore. As part of their ongoing search for Osgore, Murat and Sule come across a hotel displaying the symbol that Murat associates with Osgore. They decide to investigate by entering the hotel and seeking an audience with the hotel's boss. However, their encounter quickly turns dangerous. In a moment of quick thinking, Murat leverages his past experience and knowledge of recording voices to offer the boss a rare tape. This move impresses the boss, diffusing the tension and earning them a chance to sit and talk. As Murat and Sule are about to explain their quest for Osgore, their conversation is interrupted by a lady entering the room to deliver an item and collect payment. After she leaves, the boss encourages them to continue. Murat and Sule reveal their search for the person associated with the symbol they possess. To their surprise, the boss informs them that the lady who just left was the one who brought the symbol to the hotel. Reacting quickly, Murat and Sule rush outside to catch the lady, but they are too late. She drives away, showing no interest in engaging with them. This missed opportunity leaves Murat and Sule with more questions than answers as they continue their journey in the uncertain and dangerous world. My friends, the continuation of the story is now on the screen in front of you.